The Trump admin accidentally texted me its war plans. U.S. national security leaders included me in a group chat about upcoming military strikes in Yemen. I didn't think it could be real. Then the bomb started falling. By Jeffrey Goldberg, part of the Jew alumni. Oh boy. Have we read articles by Goldberg before? I feel like I don't know if we read tweets by him, but I feel like I've seen it on, or maybe Twitter or something. The world found out shortly before 2 p.m. Eastern Time on March 15th that the United States was bombing Houthi targets across Yemen. I, however, knew 2 hours before the first bombs exploded that the attack might be coming. The reason I knew this is that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, had texted me the war plan at 11:44 a.m. The plan included precise information about weapons packages, targets, and timing. This is going to require some explaining. The story technically begins shortly after the Hamas invasion of southern Israel in October of 2023. The Houthis, an Iran-backed terrorist organization whose motto is, God is great, death to America, death to Israel, curse on the Jews, victory to Islam. Just as a quick aside, guys, I know this looks anti-Semitic, but there's a good Hassan stream explaining why it's actually not. Okay? And if you think it is, it's just because you're part of the Zog. All right? Soon launched attacks on Israel and on international shipping, creating havoc for global trade. Throughout 2024, the Biden administration was ineffective in countering these Houthi attacks. The incoming Trump administration promised a tougher response. Wait, is that true? I thought we bombed every missile platform and the attacks basically stopped. Am I making that up? I thought that happened. But, okay. This is where Pete Hegseth and I come in. On Tuesday, March 11th, I received a connection request on Signal from a user identified as Michael Waltz. Signal is an open source encrypted messaging service popular with journalists and others who seek more privacy than other text messaging services are capable of delivering. I assumed that the Michael Waltz in question was President Donald Trump's national security advisor. I did not assume, however, that the request was from the actual Michael Waltz. I have met him in the past, and though I didn't find it particularly strange that he might be reaching out to me, I did think it somewhat unusual given the Trump administration's contentious relationship with journalists and Trump's periodic fixation on me specifically. It immediately crossed my mind that someone could be masquerading as Waltz in order to somehow entrap me. It's not at all uncommon these days for nefarious actors to try to induce journalists to share information that could be used against them. I accepted the connection request, hoping that this was the actual national security advisor and that he wanted to chat about Ukraine or Iran or some other important matter. 2 days later, Thursday at 4:28 p.m., I received a notice that I was to be included in a Signal chat group. It was called the Houthi PC Small Group. A message to the group from Michael Waltz read as follows: team establishing a principals group for coordination on Houthis, particularly for over the next 72 hours. My deputy, Alex Wong, is pulling together a Tiger team at deputy/agency chief of staff level, following up from the meeting in the sit room this morning for action items that we'll be sending that out later this evening. The message continued, please provide the best staff POC from your team for us to coordinate with over the next couple days and over the weekend. Thanks. The term Principals Committee generally refers to a group of the senior-most national security officials, including the Secretaries of Defense, State, and the Treasury, as well as the Director of the CIA. It should go without saying, but I'll say it anyway, that I have never been invited to a White House Principals Committee meeting, and that, in my many years of reporting on national security matters, I had never heard of one being convened over a commercial messaging app. 1 minute later, a person identified only as Mar, the Secretary of State is Marco Antonio Rubio, wrote, Mike Needham for State, apparently designating the current counselor of the State Department as his representative. At that same moment, a Signal user identified as J.D. Vance wrote, Andy Baker for VP. 1 minute after that, TG, presumably Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence, or someone masquerading as her, wrote, Joe Kent for DNI. 9 minutes later, Scott B., apparently Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, or someone spoofing his identity, wrote, Dan Katz for Treasury. At 4:53 p.m., a user called Pete Hegseth wrote Dan Caldwell for DOD. And at 6:34, Brian wrote Brian McCormick for NSC. One more person responded, John Ratcliffe, wrote at 5:24 p.m. with the name of a CIA official to be included in the group. I'm not publishing that name because that person is an active intelligence officer. The principals had apparently assembled. In all, 18 individuals were listed as members of this group, including various National Security Council officials. Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East and Ukraine negotiator. Oh, he does Ukraine negotiations as well? That's even worse. Susie Wiles, the White House Chief of Staff. and someone identified only as SM, which I took to stand for Stephen Miller, I appeared on my own screen only as JG. That was the end of the Thursday text chain. After receiving the Waltz text related to the Houthi PC small group, I consulted a number of colleagues. We discussed the possibility that these texts were part of a disinformation campaign initiated by either a foreign intelligence service or, more likely, a media gadfly organization, like Project Veritas, the sort of group that attempts to place journalists in embarrassing positions and sometimes succeeds. I had very strong doubts that this text group was real because I could not believe that the national security leadership of the United States would communicate on Signal about imminent war plans. I also could not believe that the national security advisor to the president would be so reckless as to include the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic in such discussions with senior U.S. officials, up to and including the vice president. The next day, things got even stranger. At 8:05 a.m. on Friday, March 14th, Michael Waltz texted the group, "Team, you should have a statement of conclusions with taskings per the president's guidance this morning in your high side inboxes." High side in government parlance refers to classified computer and communications systems. State and DoD, we developed suggested notification lists for regional allies and partners. Joint staff is sending this and a more specific sequence of events in the coming days, and we'll work with DoD to ensure COS, OVP, and POTUS are briefed. At this point, a fascinating policy discussion commenced. The account labeled JD Vance responded at 8:16. "Team, I'm out for the day doing an economic event in Michigan, but I think we are making a mistake." Vance was indeed in Michigan that day. The Vance account goes on to state, 3% of U.S. trade runs through the Suez. 40% of European trade does. There is a real risk that the public doesn't understand this or why it's necessary. The strongest reason to do this, as POTUS said, is to send a message. The Vance account then goes on to make a noteworthy statement, considering that the vice president has not deviated publicly from Trump's position on virtually any issue. I am not sure the president is aware how inconsistent this is with his message on Europe right now. There's a further risk that we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices. I'm willing to support the consensus of the team and keep these concerns to myself, but there is a strong argument for delaying this a month, doing the messaging work on why this matters, seeing where the economy is, etc. I like how this single message right here alone is more proof that Trump isn't running the White House than literally the entirety of the 4 years of stuff we got relating to Biden being too senile to run the White House, by the way. But, okay. A person identified in Signal as Joe Kent, Trump's nominee to run the National Counterterrorism Center, is named Joe Kent, wrote at 8:22, "There is nothing time-sensitive driving the timeline. We'll have the exact same options in a month." Then, at 8:26 a.m., a message landed in my Signal app from the user John Ratcliffe. The message contained information that might be interpreted as related to actual and current intelligence operations. At 8:27 a.m., a message arrived from the Pete Hegseth account, VP. I understand your concerns and fully support you raising with POTUS important considerations, most of which are tough to know how they play out: economy, Ukraine, peace, Gaza, etc. I think messaging is going to be tough no matter what. Nobody knows who the Houthis are, which is why we would need to stay focused on 1, Biden failed, and 2, Iran funded. The Hegseth, something I always wonder, and I just don't have the insight, I don't know. I always wonder, how retarded are these people versus, how much do they actually know? Because Pete Hegseth, in my mind, is coded as a retard. But, I mean, these messages don't sound retarded. But the Hegseth message goes on to state, waiting a few weeks or a month does not fundamentally change the calculus. 2 immediate risks on waiting. 1, this leaks and we look indecisive. Oops. 2, Israel takes an action first, or Gaza ceasefire falls apart, and we don't get to start this on our own terms. We can manage both. We are prepared to execute, and if I had final go or no-go vote, I believe we should. This is not about the Houthis. I see it as 2 things. 1, restoring freedom of navigation, a core national interest. And 2, reestablish deterrence, which Biden cratered. But we can easily pause, and if we do, I will do all we can to enforce 100% OPSEC, operational security. I welcome other thoughts. A few minutes later, the Michael Waltz account posted a lengthy note about trade figures and the limited capabilities of European navies. Whether it's now or several weeks from now, it will have to be the United States that reopens these shipping lanes. Per the president's request, we are working with the DoD and state to determine how to compile the cost associated and levy them on the Europeans. Jesus Christ. The account, identified as JD Vance, addressed a message at 8:45 to Pete Hegseth. If you think we should do it, let's go. I just hate bailing Europe out again. The administration has argued that America's European allies benefit economically from the U.S. Navy's protection of international shipping lanes. The user identified as Hegseth responded 3 minutes later. VP, I fully share your loathing of European freeloading. It's pathetic, but Mike is correct. We are the only ones on the planet on our side of the ledger who can do this. Nobody else even close. Question is timing. I feel like now is a good time as any, given POTUS' directive to reopen shipping lanes. I think we should go, but POTUS still retains 24 hours of decision space. At this point, the previously silent SM joined the conversation. As I heard it, the president was clear, green light, but we soon make clear to Egypt and Europe what we expect in return. We also need to figure out how to enforce such a requirement, e.g., if Europe doesn't remunerate, then what? If the U.S. successfully restores freedom of navigation at great cost, there needs to be some further economic gain extracted in return. Jesus Christ. This is what we just read. That message from SM, presumably President Trump's confidant, Stephen Miller, the deputy White House chief of staff, or someone playing Stephen Miller, effectively shut down the conversation. The last text of the day came from Pete Hegseth, who wrote at 9:46 a.m. Agreed. We hate Europe, dude. Holy f***. Like our administration hates Europe. After reading this chain, I recognize that this conversation possessed a high degree of verisimilitude. The texts, in their word choice and arguments, sounded as if they were written by the people who purportedly sent them, or by a particularly adept AI text generator. I was still concerned that this could be a disinformation operation, or a simulation of some sort, and I remained mystified that no one in the group seemed to have noticed my presence. But if it was a hoax, the quality of mimicry and the level of foreign policy insight were impressive. The United States must have proprietary apps that do something like that the government can communicate on, right? I would imagine. Are they this distrustful of our own intelligence services that they're scared of communicating on U.S. proprietary intelligence apps that they have to use Signal? Jesus. Ooh, that's dirty. Toru Baka in chat says, Destiny, it's to avoid FOIA requests. Because these conversations would be lost to time, right? Assuming they all leave the call or they delete the messages afterwards, there's no way to retrieve any of them. That's true. It was the next morning, Saturday, March 15th, when this story became truly bizarre. At 11:44 a.m., the account labeled Pete Hegseth posted in Signal a team update. I will not quote from this update or from certain other subsequent texts. The information contained in them, if they had been read by an adversary of the United States, could conceivably have been used to harm American military and intelligence personnel, particularly in the broader Middle East, Central Command's area of responsibility. What I will say, in order to illustrate the shocking recklessness of this Signal conversation, is that the Hegseth post contained operational details of forthcoming strikes on Yemen, including information about targets, weapons the U.S. would be deploying, and attack sequencing. The only person to reply to the update from Hegseth was the person identified as the vice president. I will say a prayer for victory, Vance wrote. Two other users subsequently added the prayer emoji. Kill me. According to the lengthy Hegseth text, the first detonations in Yemen would be felt 2 hours hence at 1:45 p.m. Eastern Time, so I waited in my car in a supermarket parking lot. If the Signal chat was real, I reasoned, Houthi targets would soon be bombed. At about 1:55, I checked X and searched Yemen. Explosions were being heard across Sana'a, the capital city. I went back to the Signal channel at 1:48. Michael Waltz had provided the group an update. Again, I won't quote from the text except to note that he described the operation as an amazing job. A few minutes later, John Ratcliffe wrote, a good start. Not long after, Waltz responded with 3 emoji, a fist, an American flag, and fire. Others soon joined in, including Mar, who wrote, "Good job, Pete and your team," and Susie Wiles, who texted, "Kudos to all, most particularly those in theater and CENTCOM. Really great, God bless." Steve Witkoff responded with 5 emoji, 2 hands praying, a flexed bicep, and 2 American flags. TG responded, "Great work and effects." Ooh, she didn't put any emojis because she's a Russian operative and she hates when the U.S. does a good job at military strikes. The after-action discussion included assessments of damage done, including the likely death of a specific individual. The Houthi-run Yemeni Health Ministry reported that at least 53 people were killed in the strikes, a number that has not been independently verified. Jesus. On Sunday, Waltz appeared on ABC's This Week and contrasted the strikes with the Biden administration's more hesitant approach. These were not kind of pinprick back and forth, what ultimately proved to be feckless attacks, he said. This was an overwhelming response that actually targeted multiple Houthi leaders and took them out. The Signal chat group, I concluded, was almost certainly real. Having come to this realization, one that seemed nearly impossible only hours before, I removed myself from the Signal group, understanding that this would trigger an automatic notification to the group's creator, Michael Waltz, that I had left. No one in the chat had seemed to notice that I was there, and I received no subsequent questions about why I left, or more to the point, who I was. Wait, why did he leave? Was he worried about getting blackbagged or something? Earlier today, I emailed Waltz and sent him a message on his Signal account. I also wrote to Pete Hegseth, John Ratcliffe, Tulsi Gabbard, and other officials. In an email, I outlined some of my questions. Is the Houthi PC small group a genuine Signal thread? Did they know I was included in this group? Was I, on the off chance, included on purpose? If not, who did they think I was? Did anyone realize who I was when I was added? Or when I removed myself from the group, do senior Trump administration officials use Signal regularly for sensitive discussions? Do the officials believe that the use of such a channel could endanger American personnel? Brian Hughes, the spokesman for the National Security Council, responded 2 hours later, confirming the veracity of the Signal group. This appears to be an authentic message chain, and we're reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain. Why would he confirm that? Hughes wrote, the thread is a demonstration of the deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials. The ongoing success of the Houthi operation demonstrates that there were no threats to troops or national security. William Martin, a spokesperson for Vance, said that despite the impression created by the texts, the vice president is fully aligned with the president. The vice president's first priority is always making sure the president's advisors are adequately briefing him on the substance of their internal deliberations. He said, Vice President Vance unequivocally supports this administration's foreign policy. The president and the vice president have had subsequent conversations about this matter and are in complete agreement. I've never seen a breach quite like this. It's not uncommon for national security officials to communicate on Signal, but the app is used primarily for meeting planning and other logistical matters, not for detailed and highly confidential discussions of a pending military action. And of course, I've never heard of an instance in which a journalist has been invited to such a discussion. Conceivably, Waltz, by coordinating a national security-related action over Signal, may have violated several provisions of the Espionage Act. No one cares. Nothing is illegal in this admin, which governs the handling of national defense information, according to several national security lawyers interviewed by my colleague Shane Harris for this story. Harris asked them to consider a hypothetical scenario in which a senior U.S. official creates a Signal thread for the express purpose of sharing information with cabinet officials about an active military operation. He did not show them the actual Signal message or tell them specifically what had occurred. All of these lawyers said that a U.S. official should not establish a Signal thread in the first place. Information about an active operation would presumably fit the law's definition of national defense information. The Signal app is not approved by the government for sharing classified info. The government has its own systems for that purpose. Okay, makes sense. If officials want to discuss military activity, they should go into a specially designed space known as a sensitive compartmented information facility, or SCIF. Most cabinet level national security officials have one installed in their home or communicate only on approved government equipment, the lawyer said. Normally, cell phones are not permitted inside of a SCIF, which suggests that as these officials were sharing information about an active military operation, they could have been moving around in public. Had they lost their phones or had they been stolen, the potential risk to national security would have been severe. Hegseth, Ratcliffe, and other cabinet-level officials presumably would have no authority or would have the authority to declassify info, and several of the national security lawyers noted that the hypothetical officials on the Signal chain might claim that they had declassified the info they shared, psychically, right? But this argument rings hollow, they caution, because Signal is not an authorized venue for sharing information of such a sensitive nature, regardless of whether it has been stamped top secret or not. There's another potential problem. Waltz set some of the messages in the Signal group to disappear after 1 week and some after 4. That raises questions about whether the officials may have violated federal records law. Text messages about official acts are considered records that should be preserved. Damn. How often do they use these things, and to do what? Do you think it's unhinged to celebrate an airstrike that killed civilians? I mean, every military attack is probably going to endanger or kill civilians to some extent. It's a little bit bleak, I guess, to be putting like emojis on it. But do you think he was retarded for leaving the group chat? Well, I mean, you could argue that once he had knowledge, it becomes a crime to stay, maybe, and that's why he left, maybe? I'm not sure. Jesus Christ. Well, I look forward to this being a non-story in about 6 hours. Just kidding. It's already a non-story. Jesus. I don't get how this doesn't instantly start a special investigation. These high-level government officials are literally using... Sorry. Special investigations and special prosecutors are appointed by the DOJ, the Attorney General. The Attorney General is a Trump sycophant. That will never, ever happen. There will never be a special counsel for this admin. That's funny that you would even suggest that, though. Also, look forward to me asking Trumples in the future about this thing, and every single one will go, oh, wait, I haven't read about that. I haven't heard about that. I didn't hear anything about that at all. Wait, what? I didn't hear anything about that. Wait, what? In a Signal group? I didn't know about that. That's going to be the response to every single person I ever bring this up to, so. Bro, Destiny, this shit happened to Hillary, bro? True. Wait, actually, I don't know if you're saying that unironically, if you're typing like a hypothetical retard message in YouTube chat. Realistically, how do you see this ending? A revolution of sorts, or are we just sitting by watching democracy crumble? I don't know. It'll depend on Democrats getting their messaging together, and it'll depend on the real pain that Americans feel by the policies of this administration. Assuming that like the tariffs and everything go through and there's economic harm, people will just vote for the Democrats in the next cycle, and we'll just keep chugging forward. What is Signal anyway? What's special about it? The special thing about Signal is that the messages themselves are just stored locally on both devices. There shouldn't be a middle server that ever has the messages stored on them. And the messages should be deleted. You can delete both sides, I think, on Signal. I don't know. I've used Signal like twice before. Yeah, I think the main thing is that there are the messages aren't stored on any middle server device. Everybody in chat is about to start typing end-to-end encryption, but everybody uses fucking end-to-end encryption. It's that there's no server in the middle that's storing all the messages. That's the big deal. Oh, and it's open source, somebody said? Okay. Is there any reasonable expectation that the GOP will allow any power transfer in the future? I mean, if they lose elections, they'll have to, right? Hopefully. Could the next president even undo all the horrible stuff Trump is doing with EOs, or would it be harder? Well, you can undo. An EO is easy to undo. You can just do another EO. That's the bad thing and the good thing, I guess, about executive orders. Whatever one does, you can undo. The problem is that you undo some, but the getting back to where we were before is very difficult. So, for instance, it could be that our cuck judges now, apparently everybody in our government is a cuck, eventually rule that the Venezuelan, or not the Venezuelan stuff, the El Salvador deportations that we're doing are illegal and they need to be undone. But you might never be able to undo those now because the El Salvadorian government might say, nope, sorry, we're keeping these people. Suck dick. And now the U.S. either has to go to war to extract people that they deported, and they won't, realistically. The Trump admin will just say, oh, well, we tried, sorry, and then that'll be it. So, and same thing with like USAID and whatnot. Like you might be able to restore the funding and bring these back, but now you have to stand up all of these international offices and everything again. It might be hard to rebuild. Some of that just might never come back like that. Destiny, end-to-end encrypted, peer-to-peer, and open source are all the buzzwords. Yeah, sure. End-to-end encryption is whatever, though, I feel. Peer-to-peer is nice, assuming that's the big one, that there aren't messages stored on a central server. That means that nobody could like subpoena Signal to get your messages. So theoretically, they should be private between two parties. Open source, I guess, is nice because other people can check the source to make sure there's not weird shit going on. But because I want to say, wasn't it WhatsApp or something that was storing messages on a central server? And that was a big deal because they were able to subpoena shit and find something or whatever. I don't remember. Something like that. You're just trusting Signal to not store them, though, unless I'm missing something. Well, you're not trusting them because it's open source, right? So supposedly you can check the code, or other people can. Do you think this was a legit fumble by the admin or purposeful of including the reporter? It seems strange for Trump admin to add a reporter on accident, but I may just be schizo and they're legit stupid. What would be the purpose for including him? Oh, that might have been Telegram, not WhatsApp. Despite the Trump admin being about as smart as a below-average chihuahua, what do you rate the Democrats' chances for the next elections? They still don't seem to have together. I think it'll win the party, but I don't know. We'll see. I just think things are such a joke right now, and it seems like Trump's popularity has just decreased since the election. So who knows? We'll see. No, the messages still go through Signal servers, so they could be storing them, but they're E2E, so it shouldn't matter anyway. Insert hedge here. Okay. I don't fully understand how encryption works on phones in a way that I don't know if, like, here's a question. So let's say that the messages are truly end-to-end encrypted, but I'm storing the messages and I control the program. If there was some theoretical way that I could just enforce like a password change on your account, couldn't I on a local device just log into your Signal account, type in the password that I just changed, and now I have access to all of your messages? Like, explain to me why that wouldn't work. You would have to enable multi-device features? Okay. I don't know if, yeah, I'm not sure how much I believe you, but I don't know. I don't know. You need to extract encryption keys from the phone. So if okay, here's a question. If I message someone on my Signal account, and then I go onto my iPad and I install Signal, and then I put Signal on that account, none of the messages from anything else would load, or would they? Someone said they would, someone said they won't. You would have to use your phone to register it. Unless you use your phone to allow your iPad to access them, no. Fuck me, I don't want to do this. Assuming that I control the software, is it really, like, I don't know. I don't trust anybody in chat. The problem is I don't trust any of you retards because you guys will say shit without knowing anything. So I don't know who to trust. If I control the software and I have my messages on a server, or I've got your message on my server, and the only thing preventing me from reading those messages is an encrypted key, let's say it's even stored locally on your phone, but there's some way to authorize the reading of those messages using another device, why couldn't I just have a phone on my own, okay, and then using this phone, because I control the software and I have your messages on a server, why couldn't I just push an update to the software that allows me to log into your account and then duplicate that local key, or get the local key somehow, I guess, because you can already do it from other accounts, right? Somehow you can transfer messages, and then to do that, is that impossible? It would never happen? Or if you have the original device, yes, it's possible. Why would you need the original one? Is there some piece of information that's stored on the original phone that can never be, like, you can't change whether or not you need it? Is that like built into the encryption protocol somehow? Or I don't know why I'm asking chat this. Okay, who cares? Anyway, wowzers, what a crazy story that was. If you assume a malicious software update, then yeah, you could extract the keys. Yeah, but my issue is that, like, I feel like a malicious software update would be trivial for Signal to do, such that there would be no point to trust it. Because couldn't you theoretically, you could just clone the entire project on a local network and then just virtualize a phone, and then now with your local project that you've just copied, now you could push a malicious software update, extract whatever key you need, unless you need to have access to the actual physical device in the real world, or change the fact that you even need that requirement and then just read the encrypted messages, no? But I don't know. Maybe built into the encryption itself is something that gets wrapped with the key on the local device, and if you don't have access to that local device physically, or at least somehow you'd never get it again, maybe. I have no idea. I don't know. You need to push it to Google Store, for example, then auto update. Why would because you need access to the original device? Because otherwise can't you just clone everything locally and then push the updates like that? You could just have your own copy of you could fork, I guess, a local project and just do it there, no? There's undoubtedly a solution to the problem you're posing. You just need someone who understands the protocol in depth to answer it. Well, if somehow the requirements of the app itself, or there's a key that is created, a private key that's literally just stored locally on a device that's never shared with, and I guess the device shouldn't be sharing that key. That's the whole point of it being an encrypted key. If it shared it, it wouldn't be encrypted anymore. Anybody could just use it, I guess. I just don't know in terms of, like, if you control the software and if you can have the messages locally, I have no idea. I don't know. The original phone has the key. You need to make the phone run a malicious. Okay, so you would need access to that original phone then. So there's no way that they would ever be able to. Okay, all right, okay.